Welcome to Real Wisdom, where we dive into the real stories of remarkable women. Today, I'm so happy to introduce Thea Wood, the founder of Herizon Music. She's a visionary who's uplifting the next generation of women in music. Through her work, Thea is not just a voice in the industry, but a model for empowerment. She's guiding and inspiring women to amplify their talents and break barriers. And if you're curious to hear more stories like this, don't forget to hit the subscribe button. So, Thea, I know that you have a dedication to uplifting women in the music industry. And I'm not even sure how that works because when you see it as someone in the audience or someone who's listening to music or streaming music, you think that this is just simple. People just get on a platform or they start recording and everybody finds their music. But I don't think it's that easy. I don't think it's that easy to get into the industry, and I don't think it's that easy, especially for women. So, can you tell me why you decided to advocate for women in the music industry, and how do you make sure that their talents are recognized and celebrated?
Well, first of all, thanks for having me on your show. I'm so excited to be interviewed, Holly. Everybody, Holly and I met years ago when I was publishing She Spark magazine, which was a magazine that was uplifting women over 40. And it was really focused on style, beauty, and wellness. And in late 2018, I went to see Joan Jett's documentary Bad Reputation. Have you seen that?
Yes, yes.
Oh my God, so good. So I walked out of there, I was all empowered. And for She Spark magazine, I decided I was going to write this article, Three Things I Learned from Joan Jett, based on the experience and how I felt about the documentary. And while I was doing my research, I realized, she came up in the 70s and the 80s playing rock and roll. And I started doing my research and I was like, oh my God, like all the obstacles that she came across and, men not taking her seriously and getting the door slammed in her face and all this, nothing's really changed,
Mm.
which was very disheartening because I started off in music journalism and eventually had moved into the online environment because America Online hired me to start up their music department. I'd been in the music industry for a long time. I took the hiatus when I had my kid, but this revelation, this discovery upset me so much. It made me angry. And I decided I need to do something about this. My husband calls me the fixer. I find something and I'm like, oh my God, we got to fix this. And one of the ways of doing that is the power of the pen or the power of the keyboard in this case. And I decided that I really wanted to get back to my musical roots and passions and turn everything that I learned from running She Spark and my image consulting company and my TEDx talks and my book writing and everything that I'd learned and say, okay, how can we do this to advocate for women in music? When you have a situation where women get one nomination in the Grammys for every nine that men get, when you see and a solid concrete example, last week I got a little email promotion from Live Nation about all the upcoming music that was coming to Detroit and all their venues. There were 19 artists listed, only one was a female act. Okay. When you look at radio airplay, and there was a big trend for years that some consultant who didn't even have a basis for his analysis told a bunch of country music stations don't play two women or female acts back to back. So their radio airplay started to go down more so than it already was, right? We
So
see
that wasn't the fix.
that was not the fix. And well, and what we saw, I think, as a result of that, is you started to see a lot of country music, women who were in country music cross over to pop because they were getting more opportunities in the pop category. Those crossovers became very popular. And I mean, Taylor Swift, your shining example of that,
Hmm.
right? But really what it was for me is, where where media has failed, maybe I can help. and talking about independent artists who are up and coming. My podcast, Herizon Music, also interviewing women who are on stage, on air, and behind the scenes in the music industry, whether they're trailblazers or rising stars. Their stories deserve to be heard. And the more that we get to know them, the more their music can proliferate in modern times, as well as affect us and hopefully find an audience that they weren't given the opportunity to find before.
The power of stories, I think, and forming that connection with the artist is so powerful. When you came home after seeing the movie, was your husband around, and did he think, "Oh no, here we go"?
It's funny because it didn't happen overnight. What happened was I kept stewing, and I kept researching, and of course then I'm talking to him about this, and he's wonderful. I mean, he was so supportive, and he said, if that is what you want to do, go for it and do it. And even today, he's so great because I'll be sitting there working and all of a sudden, ping, I'll get a text message on my phone, right? And by the way, we both work from home. So he's texting me from his office downstairs. And he'll be like, "Ooh, this would be a good person for you to interview." And a lot of times it's a name of somebody I've never heard before. So he's kind of, gotten into the groove of this and is excited about it. So I'm pretty blessed.
So he's on the lookout.
He is on the lookout. And man, if there is somebody who loves music more than me, it is him. I mean, that man, he is he's my soulmate for sure. He keeps me interested in discovering new music and experiences, and that's what it's all about.
Oh, well, that sounds like you have a perfect combination between the two of you.
We do. We keep each other very entertained.
So I want to dive a little bit deeper into your story, but before we do that, I'd like to get to know you on a different level. Can I challenge you with a quick game of this or that?
Sure.
Sure. Okay. Vinyl or streaming?
Streaming.
Detroit style pizza or Chicago deep dish?
Oh, Detroit all the way.
Historical fiction or true crime podcasts?
Oh, historical fiction.
And vintage fashion or latest trends?
Latest trends.
Cosmopolitan or Cabernet?
Ooh, Cosmopolitan.
Sorry,
I had to think about that, but yes, Cosmopolitan made with Tito's.
Oh, of course.
I'm a Tito's girl.
I was going to think vintage fashion for you. I really was, because I think you have, like I just picture you kind of in that vibe.
I'm a mix and match kind of gal. I wrote a book called The Intentional Makeover. And I am really big about all right, I love new trends. It's art for me. It's exciting to see what is up and coming. But then how do I incorporate that into more of a classic look? But I love to put something into my classic look that's a little rock and roll. Right?
Right.
So how does this new trend make me feel kind of rock and roll? How does this make me feel like I'm kicking ass? So I think that's where the new trend kind of love comes from.
Okay. Sprinkle a little bit of that in.
Exactly.
So you mentioned your podcast, Herizon Music. You like to shine the light on stories of women in the industry. Is there one story in particular that stands out to you?
That's a loaded question. That's like picking a favorite child or book. I love them all. I really do. And like you, Holly, and your stories that you share with women about women, we all have a different story.
Mhm.
They're all a different angle. But there are people who surprise me, right? If we talk a little bit about that, Boyfriend, who is a rapper in New Orleans, there was a little bit of that surprise element because her rap is very feminist. It's very sexual. It's very gritty and in your face. She's an excellent writer. She writes for Big Freedia. She writes for Galactic. She writes for all these different groups. But her show is this cabaret show. And talk about vintage. So she's a rap woman who has this vintage lingerie on and vintage hair curls. She has hair curlers on stage and she's just so crazy, and the granny panties and everything. But she's got this wit about her that's so exceptional, and her songwriting is fresh. And when I sat down and talked to her, I found out in my research she grew up in hardcore Church of Christ family.
Oh, interesting.
I went to the Church of Christ growing up. And it was funny because there was this revelation during the podcast interview where I'm like, you swear, you talk about sex, you do all this stuff. How does your family reconcile with this? And she's like, oh, that's a loaded question. Listen to the podcast to hear how it went. But the point being is that I said, well, we have something in common. And she said, what's that? And I said, we both grew up in the Church of Christ, and her sister was with her. And they had a collective gasp. Like they couldn't believe it. And then it took this turn about how you're raised versus what you feel your calling is and what you were meant to do, and how that can coincide with or completely conflict with people in your family. And then how it could also, you might presume things about your family that are limiting and that are also negative and not realize it. And she even said, bad on me for me doing that about my family as well. That was kind of a surprising and much more in depth personal interview than I would have expected. I love my job, by the way. I meet the most incredible people and learn so much every day. It's a blessing.
It seems from the outside that women getting into the music industry in their 20s and 30s, and it's difficult for them, but I can almost imagine that for women that are maybe in their 40s and 50s that are interested in getting into music, it is even more challenging. Is that rare, or have you encountered that women, as they get older, still have a passion for that?
Okay, yes, they still do have a passion. What they don't see is a career path.
Mm.
That's the hard part. We have become, especially with the advent of MTV, we became an extraordinary visual society when it came to music. And now, of course, you've got YouTube and everything else on the internet. And even Spotify has started to integrate video and photos.
Right.
And we've just become an extremely visual society. And unfortunately, in the music industry, there's an unspoken rule that if you haven't made it by the time of age 30, you've pretty much aged out of having some commercial success, right? And of course, that goes back to, oh, we want to look young and pretty and thin and checking all the boxes, right?
Right.
Sexy. Sexy is a big one. And so women who are older feel like, how do I compete with that? I talked to a number of people about this. I have partnered with Wavemakers 40 Plus founder Lurleen Ladd, who's also trying to boost the confidence of women who are looking at pursuing careers in music. But, what I say as somebody who was a previous image consultant, it's really about your message. Okay. It's more powerful than we give it credit for, your visual message or your brand, right? And of course, the talent in the music, the talent in the songwriting, that's all got to be there. But so many of us think, oh my gosh, I'm not sexy, so I can't make it. I am here to tell everyone, write this down, everybody take note, sleep on it, okay? Sexy is fleeting, cool is forever.
I love that.
Sexy is fleeting, cool is forever. And not only that, but sexy is also extraordinarily subjective. Versus, you know a cool person when you see it. You know somebody who oozes confidence but is not a jerk. Somebody who has a passion or a talent or something that they're really good at that you say, wow, that makes them so cool. They are so good at that. So I really try to impress upon people that's the number one, because your sense of cool, who you are, being proud of it and owning it will attract like-minded people. And that's who you want. You want people who believe in you, who make the path easier, who are excited. You don't want to sit there and have to beg, borrow, steal, lie, pretend you're somebody you're not just to get a break or just to get a record sold. Find your people. The way to do that, get your inner cool and let it roll. Wave your freak flag.
Well, it's interesting. At one of the recent music award shows, there was a moment where someone that we haven't seen in quite a while popped on stage and sang for us. Do you know what I'm talking about?
Okay, so I wrote about this. That woman got on stage and it was kind of quiet. Should we do a little background on why she was on the Grammy
Sure.
stage?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, so Luke Combs, who is a country singer, took her song from, what was it, early 90s? I think she was early 90s when Fast
Yes.
Car came out. Took Fast Car, did a cover of it. It blew up on country music radio, took her to number one, which made her the first black female artist to have a number one, or should I say songwriter, to have a number one song on the country music charts. And she rarely ever goes and plays anything like an awards ceremony.
Mm-hmm.
She's a very private person and quiet. And so Luke Combs is out there, and all of a sudden Tracy Chapman walks out, and everybody's like, what the hell is going on around here? And she had her guitar with her, and she was backlit. And I don't know if y'all saw this. She has this gorgeous head of huge dreads coming down with little silvery wisps coming through and shining in this backlit spotlight. And she started strumming and she looks up and she had this twinkle in her eye and she started smiling. The whole audience literally melted down. I mean, it was just like everybody started screaming and yelling, and the whole thing was just such an incredible experience for everybody that it garnered even more attention toward her song. And all I could think of was, how old is this woman? She's like 59 years old and
Mm-hmm.
she looks phenomenal, but she wasn't coloring her hair. She wasn't wearing a bunch of makeup. She was wearing pants and a beautiful top, a Prada, I believe she was wearing, and flats. There was nothing that was the traditional sexy awards show garb. And that is the perfect example of cool being forever. I mean, you just can't top it.
Right? You just looked at her and it was just so easy, and the confidence in the music, and you're like, that's it. You're right.
And that's how she came on stage, and that's how she wowed everybody, and that's why everybody's talking about her. And by the way, Luke, you did a great job too. We love you too. And the other thing too that was brought to my attention from my Substack tribe is that he had a past experience with racism in music. And so that was like the story behind the story. And you can subscribe to my newsletter, Herizon Music, Herizon. And the article talks a little bit about that background and a link to the full story. But that's what made it even more special.
Since we're talking about it, and you mentioned She Spark, and when you launched the magazine about style and fashion, it's hard when women start to get into their 40s and 50s, and you don't feel like you even fit in your own skin. When you were interviewing women for the magazine, was there a commonality that you found when it came to style and fashion and women who just kind of got it?
I think, again, the get it is knowing is people who experimented and found what worked for them instead of trying to be like someone else,
Mm-hmm.
right? So I would love to look as awesome in a t-shirt and a pair of Levi's as Jennifer Aniston. I do not. I do not have Jennifer Aniston's body. I don't have her personality. The reason why so many want to look like her and be like her in that way and style like her is because she pulls it off so stinking well
Mm-hmm.
that we're all a little bit like, oh, I want to be like that. But that doesn't mean that we have to look and dress just like her. What we have to do is find our own sense of style. Now, there are some rules and art. And when I say rules, I mean like artistic, you know what I
Mm-hmm.
mean? Like design rules that you can use to manipulate how you look for your best enhanced presentation.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, if you're doing it to try to look or feel like somebody else, and that's not you, it's not going to work.
Mm-hmm.
You're going to feel awkward and you're going to appear awkward to other people. Now, when we get older, it's even harder because designers do not design for our bodies as they shift and change as we get older. And I'm getting a little personal here. I started going through menopause almost 2 years ago.
Mhm.
And within 18 months, I gained over 30 pounds. And I was horrified. None of my clothes would fit me. I didn't want to be photographed because none of my clothes fit me. And I didn't know where to go from there. And I live in a rock and roll world, and I'm surrounded by a lot of younger people, and I didn't know how to handle this at first. The first thing that I had to do, Holly, was say, okay, enough is enough until I can figure out a healthy, safe way to deal with my weight.
Mhm.
I need to, my weight gain, I guess I should say. I need to take all those clothes in my closet that do not make me happy, and I need to put them all in boxes and store them away.
Mhm.
Because every single time I went into my closet, I wanted to cry. And that is not a good way to start your day.
No.
So I did all that, and I made a short list of, oh, and by the way, ladies and gentlemen, even my feet grew. So my shoes didn't even fit me anymore. My feet grew a whole half size. I had all these beautiful designer shoes that I collected over the years. Don't fit me anymore. And in that case, they never will. My
Mhm.
feet have grown. That is not changeable. I can't reverse that. But I took all of that stuff and I put it away. The shoes I consigned. I was like, I've got to make myself happy when I get into my closet. And a lot of ladies who came to me for image consulting said, oh, I want to look skinny. 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 It's not about the skinny. It is about, what is my message? Who am I? Are people going to recognize me when I walk down the street? Am I giving the message of who I am so that people can say, ooh, I want to talk to her. She looks like an interesting person, or she looks like she belongs to my tribe. And I had to do that again and change kind of some of my styling guidelines because my body had changed. So I had to change how I dressed myself in order to continue my message, but with a wardrobe that fit me again.
I love that you said that about your closet because that is so true. And I think right away, if that's like your first trigger in the morning when you go look in the closet and nothing works for you, you've got to get rid of that stuff because it's
Yeah.
just sad.
And like I said, I didn't throw it all away. My
Right.
goal is that a lot of these clothes I'll be able to wear again because they're my forever clothes. But I just had to get them. It made me want to cry every time I saw them and I couldn't wear them. So I was like, all right, I'm done. I'm not doing that anymore. I'm putting them in these plastic bins, putting them in the back storage closet. And then when it's time, they can come out again. If it's never time again, then we'll decide from there what to do. But for now, that's where they are.
That makes perfect sense. Your journey has pulled you from music to style and fashion and back to music again, but I think there's still a little bit of fashion mixed in there.
Oh, come on. The red carpet and fashion. It all goes hand in hand, right?
What were some of the defining moments where you thought, I can't do this anymore. I don't want music anymore. I'm gonna do fashion, or vice versa? Or is it all just kind of mixed together?
I wanted to get back into music before I ended up going into image consulting, but I had a small child.
Mm.
And when you work in the music industry, there's a lot of travel, there's a lot of late nights, there's a lot of spontaneity. It's very hard to get a schedule going, especially as a journalist. You're kind of at the mercy of other people's schedules. I didn't feel I could go back into music at that time. And I waited until my son was older, and I felt in 2018, I felt like, okay, I'm at a point now where I could do this and still be a mom. And it sucks because how many guys are out there saying, I'm going to hold off on my career because I have kids,
Yes, that's true.
right? But it's the wives, the mothers end up becoming the main caregiver. And I'm not dissing that. And I think
Mhm.
being a full-time mom is a wonderful gift if you can do it. But the fact that the industry doesn't have the support system to be able to have the career and have the kids is a problem. And that's why I love new technology, because new technology starts to take away that barrier. And you talked about age. We talk about how you look. We talk about your familial status. It's like this is why technology is our friend, because now what can we do? We can stream. And that's part of the reason why I chose live streaming over vinyl, is because live streaming makes you extremely accessible right away to people. Um, I hate the business model for artists. That's a totally different conversation. But I like how much you can do with it. And I also like that virtual reality is in the wee stages of coming into its own. So I'm also working with a VR company right now for live music in the virtual realm for indie artists. So look at all of these barriers that we have just removed. This is what I'm hoping I can give back to the women in music is this type of free flow of information and idea generation and how to's so that we have different ways that we can be successful in a music career, not just being on stage and touring.
Right. And not have it matter so much about location or, like you said, who you are, what you look like, what you do, but the ability to get your music out there and get it in front of people.
That's right.
I love that. I know that you like telling stories also, and there's always something behind the scenes or things that we never really get to know about people. So I'd like to turn the tables on you right now. Is there anything that we don't know about Thea that you'd like to share today?
Oh my gosh, anything that you don't know about me? Oh, well, what have other people have said? Maybe
You're the first person I've ever asked that.
Oh, really?
Yes.
Oh,
So
well, I'm honored.
I'm really putting you on the spot.
You are putting me on the spot. Okay, well, I've told this story a few times to some people, but most people do not know it. And I wonder if maybe this touched me in my life's journey. When I was little, I think I was 5 or 6 years old. I was young, maybe 7. My mom took me to Disney because that's what kids do. And now, mind you, I don't remember any of this. And we were standing in those very, very long lines for rides. And apparently, a guy came up and he was by himself and he decided that he was going to ride with us on some rides. And my mom didn't think anything of it at first. He just stood behind us in line and then he started getting on rides with us. And my mom realized very quickly that she recognized this person, and it was John Lennon. It was John Lennon, and he rode on rides with us for the afternoon. And I think he was just trying to blend in and look like everyone else. And I said, "How are you sure that it was John Lennon?" She said, "Oh, yeah, because when we were leaving, as we exited, his limo came and picked him up. And, he said goodbye to us." She said, "My biggest regret is that I was trying to play it cool, right?" And she was like, "My biggest regret is I never asked him for an autograph." And I was like, how awful is it that I don't remember any of this?
He probably thought of that day as being grateful that someone didn't ask him. That he could just hang out with you guys and go on rides and just be a guy.
Just be an average Joe Schmo.
Yeah.
I did buy from the Yoko Ono collection that she did reprints of different things that he had done. And I have a picture of him that I have framed and hanging in my office. And I was actually looking at that when I came up with Herizon Music as the name of. Originally, I was Backstage Chats, but then I was like, I need to change that. And he was a little bit part of that and part of the Songbird. And just he was a huge influence on that. So I always wonder, I'm like, oh, maybe John Lennon's a little bit of like my music fairy godfather. I like to think so.
That's a great story. We're getting to the end. I always like to ask the guest to share something that you've got going on that you're passionate about, that you'd like everyone to know about.
I'm going to go back to the whole virtual reality company. I work for a company now called Telepresent Media. I'm on the founding team. And what we've been working on is what's called mixed virtual reality. So we have live music studios where our first studio is in Maui right now because that's where my business partner Danny lives. Shout out to Danny. Hi, Danny. We worked together at AOL and we worked so well together that he called me up and he's like, I think I want you on this. Tell me what you think. And so basically it's a live studio we bring in local musicians. They play to a VR audience. Mm-hmm. Do you have a headset, Holly?
I don't know, but I know
No?
exactly what you're talking about.
Okay, so everybody out there, grab your headsets if you have one or buy one and you go to the big screen app. We're doing workshopping in that app while we develop our own proprietary app for this. But basically what you can do is you can go into these virtual rooms and our artists perform live from the studio in Maui, and that is projected into the room, right? It's broadcasted into the room or live streamed. But I'm looking for a word for it because it's not just live streamed like a television. You can actually talk with and interact with the musicians, and the musicians can see you and talk to you and interact with you in real time. So like they're not avatars. It's their real person on stage in the room on stage. We're all avatars and we're all hanging out and talking to each other and dancing around our little virtual reality room from all over the world. We have people from Romania, Indonesia, Connecticut, Texas, Detroit, all over the world. And we've actually started to get a little bit of a following. Our costs and our production are very contained and actually are a way for local and independent artists to grow their audience without necessarily having to tour. So we're going to open up studios across the country to be able to do this. And I'm just, again, the possibilities are so exciting and it promotes a lot of gender equity. I want ladies, please, if you are in music and you want to try something new, a new frontier, VR is the new frontier, and call me. And if you're going to Maui, let me know so I can book you in the studio.
I had so much fun talking with you today, and I feel that we're gonna have to do an update here as the virtual reality as that grows because we're gonna have to see that in action. Thank you so much for today. This has been really great, and you've got a great story and so many interesting things happening. So we're gonna have to keep the momentum
Thank you
going
so
here.
much, Holly. I really appreciate that you asked me to be on, and I'm so excited for what you're doing and embracing and telling the stories of women worldwide. This
Thank
is
you.
lovely.
Thank you so much. Thank you for joining us on Real Wisdom. If you're inspired by stories like this and want to be part of a community that celebrates the wisdom of women, visit joinempart.com and become a part of our conversation. And don't forget to subscribe for even more real wisdom. Until next time, keep embracing your story.